Hi, everybody. It's Alex Jarett with Technology Executives Club, and welcome to Technology Executives Review, the Highlights Edition. This is a video show and podcast. I'm your host and founder of Technology Executives Club and publisher of Technology Executives Review. You can watch all of our videos at technologyexecutivesclub.com. And you can also listen to Technology Executives Review on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Each month, we do a highlights edition. And let me show you who we're going to highlight today. The first is our Board of Advisor interview with Nathan Rajen, who's Global Head of Technology at Joyson Safety Systems. Great interview. We had a wonderful keynote panel with Prabir Chatterjee of SPAATECH and Tom Drez, former CIO of Christian Brothers. That's called AI and Data in the Enterprise. You're going to want to watch that. We had a wonderful presentation from Tony Sabaj of Checkpoint Software, who talked about zero trust concepts and strategies. We had a really excellent and well-received presentation on emotional intelligence for technology executives from Tim Bartel, CIO and CFO at Lakeshore. We also had a recent Board of Advisor interview with Stan Hammond, who's Senior Principal Platform Architect at ServiceNow and previously CIO at a number of companies, including Pfizer. He had a lot of great tips and strategies to share. I hope you enjoy it. And you can see all of these videos at technologyexecutivesclub.com in whole. But today it's just the highlights. So with that, let's get to it. The first one I'm going to highlight for you is Nathan Rajen. So if you're looking at our website and you want to find Nathan's video, you'll go to our Board of Advisors section and you'll scroll down. He happens to be right on top, but he'll also be on one of these rows. You click on his picture and you'll see his landing page and the interview. So with that, let me get you to a spot in the interview that I think will be great for you, and let's get started.
And that's when I switched from this company to Siemens and had a great career with Siemens for a few years as a senior director with Siemens, driving their industry consulting services as well.
You know, a common theme that I'm seeing is this center of excellence. You know, you're driving the consulting. When you're in the consulting, every one, I see you built a center of excellence. That's pretty cool.
You cannot scale without an excellence mindset. You can achieve tactical success. You can achieve tactical success, but strategic success requires the ability to scale a tactical advantage. And you cannot do that without building this kind of a center of excellence concept.
So where did you learn this center of excellence concept? Because I've heard this from a couple other people, but you're literally building it in multiple different companies. I see this.
Even now I do it. Yeah.
You're doing it now still.
Yeah, because to me it's again, I look at it as when end of the day you are providing services.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, right, what role you are. End of the day you are delivering some services, and certain services, I would say, are commodity services, no matter what you do. Right?
Yeah.
And certain things require customer intimacy because it's more strategic and you need to understand the pulse of the customer to provide the service.
Yeah.
So when I look at what is a commodity service, no matter what I do, if something can be commoditized and scaled, then the right way to do that is through a center of excellence. Right. So whatever can be consolidated, let's consolidate. Let's get economies of scale going, and let's build a COE, whether it's a physically single COE or a virtual COE that follows the sun. So we can deliver 24/7 services to our customers. Why not? It's the best use of your money.
I mean, that's a pretty cool discipline to be able to transfer to different companies.
Yeah, and it does require the ability to have a focus on quality of what you do, right? Without quality, you cannot standardize. Without standardize, you cannot globalize.
Yeah.
And so it does require that mindset of striving for excellence in what you do. If you have that culture, then the center of excellence is a natural outcome.
That's an interesting thing. So in terms of big lessons learned I'll include Tech Mahindra and Siemens kind of together. What were some of the big lessons learned? Would that be one of them?
That's one of them. I mean, it's the consulting world is a different animal than the corporate world.
Yeah.
Right? So right, you got quarterly targets. You got all these other things to tolls because you're running a huge PL, and you got all these metrics you got to meet on a quarterly basis.
Got to be billable.
You got to be billable. These are all publicly traded companies. So
yeah,
yes, it's good in the sense that you meet a lot of customers, you are learning a lot of things, you are innovating a lot of products and services when you are in the services sector or the product sector. But be prepared to deal with the stress of that work culture. Be prepared to live out of a suitcase. That was my life for 6 years, right? So you gotta travel, you gotta travel. You don't have a choice. You gotta be in front of the customer. So that's some of the challenges in that world. But each company is different, right? So HP, Tech Mahindra, Siemens. These are the three companies where I was focusing on services. With HP, US-based company, headquartered in the US.
Yeah.
Tech Mahindra is headquartered in India. Siemens is headquartered in Germany. Very different cultures, I would say. The corporate culture is very, very different in each one of these companies. And so first, understand what your corporate culture is. Understand the culture of your company, because whether you like it or not, it matters. It absolutely matters. And you don't want to fight climb uphill, right? You need to flow. You need to understand where the flow is and try to maximize how you work within that. And so that's very important. I don't want to go into what the culture of each company is. That's different.
Yeah.
But understand your corporate culture and understand how decisions are made. Where is value being perceived in the company, right? In Siemens, for example, it's all about innovating products. It's all about innovation. It's all about how do I create new products? How do I deliver new services to the marketplace? That's Siemens. So you must focus in that kind of an environment. You really have to have a focus on innovation in everything you do. You got to innovate, even if it is a standard service that you are delivering. How can I do it better than my competitor? How can I innovate? What can I do from industry standards? How do I drive new standards into the industry overall? So you got to have that kind of a mindset when you work for that kind of a company. So that's very, very important. That's probably the biggest one, I would say. And then in the services sector, absolutely, you have to have very, very strong customer focus. Understand your customer. I really, now that I work with even more companies, I'm working with all these companies, and I really love the culture of AWS, Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Not an easy company to work for. I know the workforce. It's a very stressful work environment because they demand a lot.
Yeah.
But the culture of the company is customer comes first, period. No debate, no questions, nothing, right?
So anyways, you can tell he has a lot of awesome tips. Let me see if I can get the one last segment for you on this one. The same year, you become the CIO of Joyson.
Yeah, because after this acquisition, we literally became with the backing of our parent from Ningbo, China.
So you were with the company that got acquired. And if I'm looking at your timeline, you emerge. You're the CIO. Yeah, you're the CIO of Key Safety Systems, but then in Joyson, the same year you become the CIO of Joyson.
Yeah, because after this acquisition, we literally became like the second largest supplier in the safety systems supply chain through this acquisition.
So what's the big lesson learned there? And now you're global head of technology, strategy, and solutions, and you have all these roles that we talked about. So what's the big lesson there? And you can talk about any other lessons at Joyson, but a lot of people that I know that go through acquisitions, they don't end up at the top of the heap when the dust settles. And you did.
Interesting you say that. I mean, I'm the only executive from Key Safety Systems who is still with this company. Pretty much.
Not only still standing, you're standing at the top.
Yeah,
so please share with us what's the big lesson? Because I know from listening to you already, you understand learning about the culture, you understand the ecosystem, and learning the ecosystem. You've shared this with us already, and learning where the real value is that the company provides to the customer. You talked about quality. You've already said a number of great lessons learned, but how do you survive, not only survive, but thrive in this situation? How'd you do it?
Yeah, I mean, don't take it for granted. I don't take a single day for granted, right?
Yeah.
So this is really the first and most important one is every day you come to work, you got to prove your value. Every day. That's, because I always have that consultant mindset. right? And I tell that to my team, every day. I don't care how long you've been with the company. You got to prove your value. Number
Yeah.
one. Number
Yeah.
two, you will be tested because it's a culture clash. It's a power clash when mergers happen. These dynamics happen. I was with HP when the Compact merger happened. So I was with Ford when the Visteon divestiture happened. So we know how these things work. And especially in this case, it's a Chinese company acquiring a Japanese company through a US company. That's really what the transaction was. And a very, very complicated cultural integration, to say the least. And
Yeah.
and so, yeah, I mean, I took my time to build the relationship with the Chinese leadership.
That's really interesting.
Right.
Go on.
And understand the way they think, understand the culture of Chinese business. Very different, very, very different. What we consider, yeah, I would say it's almost in many cases the opposite of how we operate in the US. So if you don't understand those dynamics, you're going to struggle and you're going to fail miserably working for a
This is
Chinese.
Joyson we're talking about?
Joyson, yeah.
Oh.
And because our parent company is still in China, right? So Ningbo is still in China, and even though we are Joyson Safety Systems, we are part of Ningbo Joyson group of companies, the biggest one, but nonetheless. So and that's part of the reason I would say I was tested pretty heavily. I was trust is difficult to earn. So I was audited by our principal auditor from Ningbo, China. They visited me in the US at least 4 times a year to audit IT operations, IT spend, everything, right? So they just don't trust my reports, right? They came, they audited. The only thing that happened was me and the auditor became good lifelong friends in the process. He said, Nathan, they keep sending me. I don't know what I can't find anything wrong. So I might as well come and have a good time with you now.
Well, I like that quote. Trust can be difficult to earn, but I kind of like the variation that I'm hearing from you is trust is earned.
Trust is absolutely earned, and
yeah,
and also you got to work hard at retaining it. And that's what I said. Don't take it for granted. Even if you earn it once, don't take it for granted. And end of the day, yes, there will be class of philosophies, there will be class of management styles, but be a professional through all of it. I still get a paycheck.
All right, so that was awesome. So as you can see, that's definitely an interview worth watching. So the next one, you're going to enjoy this one. This is a keynote panel on AI and data in the enterprise, and I had 2 executives that I interviewed. One is Prabir Chatterjee, who's CTO, Chief Technology Officer at a company called SPAATECH. Most recently, he was formerly Director of BI Data Analytics Solutions at Spencer. They go by Spencer's, but you all know him probably as Spencer Gifts. And they also do the Halloween store that opens up every year. So, and then Tom Drez, who was most recently CIO at Christian Brothers Services. So with that, let's get to this keynote panel. I'll share a segment from that. And again, for today, it's right on top of the Technology Executives Review section. You'll see it on one of the rows. Okay, so in this interview, what we did is we covered a number of topics having to do with AI and data in the enterprise. Can't go through all of them in the highlights, but you can watch it. But I'll just flip through the questions real quick. Strategic planning, skill development, ethical considerations, data strategy, analytics capabilities, and leveraging data insights. Okay, we're going to talk about data strategy, even though we're starting on this slide, because Tom segues into data strategy. So I'm going to let you listen to some of this. What you're saying for AI. Just have a framework and have a holistic view of this thing and methodically make sure you're covering this. Tom, last comments on this one.
Yeah, I was just going to say this is probably a good segue into questions on the data, right?
Yeah.
It's got to start with the top, and then the people now, creating the data that goes into the database or the lakes or the warehouses. Now they've got some guidelines on how to operate, and they'll know then what needs to come out of this, or what can come out of this and what can't. Prabir raised a good one on privacy right there. You know, you don't want to train your AI chatbot on all the data that an organization has, give it access to everything, and have it start spitting out social security numbers or protected health information to people on the outside, right?
Yeah.
So once this starts at the top, now you can turn this over to the people updating or creating the application. So that's a great segue.
It is a great segue. And with that, why don't I ask the overall question, which I think you already gave a great partial answer. How should enterprises develop a data strategy that aligns with their AI goals? What steps are necessary to build a strong data foundation for AI? Prabir, why don't you start on this one?
Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of things in that specific strategy, right? The AI require the basic principles of AI is how much good questions you ask to AI, and you get the good questions back, right? So
you're talking about LLMs, basically.
LLM, right?
Yeah.
That's the basic theory, right? And what it does in between the LLM model or that engine, it basically parse and create all the different tokens from your words in the questions, and then finding out that what is the best answer they can retrieve, and then put it in the frame in a real format to show it to you.
Yeah.
Now that whole depends on the data. The existing model which is started with ChatGPT, they harness this data for years and then train them and creating all this framework with billions of different criteria, different your variability, right? Now but that does not give the enterprise that sense, because there's no point of this one company value of what happened to the 20 different companies, or what happened to the open internet on the same topics, because every company would be taking their leadership positions in the organizations in the marketplace, is how much they differentiate themselves from the others, right? So that means it's required that if whatever every company stands on a plethora of data, but every company has the data. Now that data, it doesn't mean that it has to be a data warehouse or tables or things like that. It means that whatever every employee is doing, it can be a conversations between the employees. It can be a Slack conversation between employees. It can be the specifications or documentations of a process. It can be the emails. It can be communications with the other mode of these things. All this data is the asset of the company, and that required a really good strategy of how you can make that one available for the model to work for your way, so that you can differentiate and create your competitive advantage. So that's what the strategy would be coming in from the things which you look at, that your company visions, and what are the things you'll be tracking it to making sure that the company visions and company strategy works, and then walk backwards to create, making sure that those data is available for the model to act on it.
That's a really interesting answer. I haven't heard that one before. So what you're talking about, actually using an internal LLM?
That's correct.
Yeah. So because I think that is the real $1 million question, is how do you leverage this for your own business processes, right? That's where you can get this accelerated growth, where AI can help you really grow. But that's really good insight. Would you want to add to that, Tom?
Certainly. Now, Prabir is certainly the expert in this area, right?
Yeah.
Now, as a CIO looking at the big picture of an enterprise, a CIO and any enterprise, they don't know what they don't know. Now, when it comes to AI, sure, we were talking about how the consumers, how the end users, the employees are going to come across it. But most CIOs, they probably don't have a large contingent of AI knowledge on staff. This kind of goes with, we talked very little on skill development.
Yeah.
I think here initially enterprises, they have to rely on the outside experts to help them wade into this particular area. Because any organization has their people focused on what their current data strategy is. And I would stake my life upon this, that if you walk into any organization, small, medium, or large, nobody is probably 100% happy with their data strategy. What they have, especially in long-time organizations, is a hodgepodge of databases, data warehouses, data lakes, things that have been created over time. And they may have started in one particular area, and maybe one business unit, and then another business unit has their own. But an organization is made up of multiple business units. And now, and it was okay back in the day, right? Your business unit A could do its thing, and business unit B could do its thing. They shared some customers, that was fine. But the CEO would let them each do their own thing. But these days, for an organization, I mean, customers know this, right? For an organization to really jump ahead, they really have to look at the customer journey, which is going to cause them to centralize things. And to do that, you're going to need a data strategy and a data foundation behind that. And I don't think anybody in any organization generally is going to have that to start with. You're going to have to go to the experts in this particular area to help you sort that all out. And again, you can't continuously improve upon something that doesn't yet exist. So a new foundation will need to be created from the experts. And I don't think most organizations have that. They have to go outside.
That's a huge insight. Well, Prabir, that's where you folks like you come into play.
Yeah,
right?
I think we come in play there, and the external vendors, as I mentioned this earlier, that is not a one specific data would be successful for the AI, right?
Yeah.
Because it required and it's a culture. I mentioned to you earlier, the data, the culture is
Last
the
time
most
we spoke.
important.
Yeah.
And since data AI is also a culture, right? It in all the organizations, all the leaders and executives, they really do need to understand what contributions they have on the data of the organizations, and also how that harness would be happening on that data to become a AI champion to use in their company, growth and leadership position. So culture is a very important point. And I totally 100% agree that most of the companies, they do not have they might did here and there, they're thinking that, oh, I have a full control of the data. And then really when you talk with them, they say, oh, I have the data in this place. I do not know what they're doing it, right? It's all over the place, and it might be duplicated. It might be multiple times. It's somebody's laptop and things like that. So that means is when you bring the outside technology and experts, bring it here, you have to be prepared to how to use it. Otherwise, you cannot be successful. So they can come and they say, oh, I do see this one. I'm creating a strategy for you, making sure that your data are all accessible, making sure data is all secure, making sure you have the governance in place. But guess what? If the executives who is responsible for implementing those governance, if they are not culturally equipped on or mentally prepared for that, it will not work, right? It will not be able to successfully implement that. And I have been hearing this one in the meetings here. This NVIDIA CEO came here and he gave the talk.
Yeah. Oh,
and
you
they
heard
exactly
him.
they're exactly talking the same thing. They're echoing everybody that it's required the executives understanding that how they bring the culture within the organizations, because that's what it follows through all the employees, they understand that, okay, what contributions they have on this culture.
That's huge insight. I think a lot of companies are going to wake up and realize how far behind they actually are. And I think I've heard it from you, Prabir, that a lot of these companies that have the, maybe the ERP system that's been there for 2 generations already, they're going to, and that's where their core business is still housed.
Right.
They're going to wake up and they're going to say, oh my gosh, maybe it's time to tell the old guy that we got to fix this finally. You know what I'm saying? It's time to get this one fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so if you're watching this, and you have not really fixed your data, this is time to do it, because this is one of those technology shifts where if you're not, I think if you're not using this technology, I don't know, Tom, if it's 5 years or 10 years, or you could be gone.
True.
Because once the AI and the algorithms take over and the business processes can be managed by these algorithms, whew, that's happened in so many businesses already. And we have another speaker who speaks a lot. He talks about the exchanges and the markets. How, remember when everybody was in the pits? And then all of a sudden, in a matter of like 2 years, the algorithms took over. And guess what? Those pits are, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which used to be one of the biggest in the country, is now a museum. So if you're watching this, make sure you got your data strategy down. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that segment. All right, that was great. Let's get to the next one. So the next one is actually a little different. It's a technology executive review mentoring session. They're all mentoring sessions if it's not a board of advisory interview, but this one was actually a presentation that Tony did, Tony Sabaj, from Office of the CTO at Checkpoint Software on zero trust concepts and strategies. So let me find a good segment from that. I'll just do the intro so you get an idea what he's going to talk about. Why is this so important? And then we'll get into the presentation.
I mean, it really has to do with the fundamental principle of security. Instead of going back to the Bush doctrine of, trust but verify, it is don't trust and also verify is really the best way of putting zero trust. Is that essentially from a computing network interconnectivity of devices and data and networks, is that you do not trust anything that you're connecting to until it's been verified. And that's really at the heart of what a zero trust architecture or principles are.
Got it. Well, that makes a lot of sense. It's funny you mentioned that, because I've heard the trust but verify so many times from so many different people, including auditors who say that. So I know it's a different principle for people to go to zero trust, and I think it makes a lot of sense in today's world. With that, why don't you get started? I'll see you when you're done.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Alex. So what I'm going to touch on here for the next 20, 25 minutes or so is really around the basics of zero trust, the principles, and then some of the common approaches of implementing a zero trust architecture. So first off, we'll define zero trust, what it means, what it doesn't mean. We'll explore sort of the zero trust journey, and we'll talk about how it's sort of a never-ending process, not in a bad way, but as in all things cybersecurity, they evolve and change over time. And then we'll look at some of the more common zero trust models out there and really which ones I believe are the most effective. So first, let's define zero trust and really what it means. And, Alex and I touched on this a little bit in the intro and gave a very, very, short answer to it. But what is really the zero trust framework? This was something that was coined by Forrester a few years ago. It's really a framework for designing not just networks, but designing the infrastructure or the information infrastructure of any organization or entity. And at the end of the day, what you're really trying to protect is the data is really at the heart of it. And what has access to that data? You have networks, you have workloads, you have people, you have devices that are all trying to get access to that data. And putting controls in that zero trust mentality of don't trust anyone and verify every single attempt at accessing that data, and then being able to wrap automation and orchestration around this, and visibility and analytics. And the automation and orchestration is very important to be able to keep your zero trust architecture up to date as things change within everybody's environment and in the security and technology space. And then having the visibility and analytics to make sure that you're actually meeting your zero trust goals and you don't have any holes, or you don't have issues that you haven't been able to take care of, and be able to report on the success of your zero trust infrastructure. And this becomes important also from a implementation standpoint, but in most organizations, this costs money to implement, and that visibility and analytics is going to be able to show your progress to the people that are actually funding your zero trust initiatives. So this is one example of a definition of zero trust. This is Forrester's definition and the way they visualize it. And we'll talk about a few others near the end of the presentation and kind of which ones make the most sense to me. So at the heart of zero trust, I mean, really what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce risk. And if we look at any risk model, regardless of whether it's information risk, cybersecurity risk, car insurance, financial risk, risk is usually defined by the impact times the probability of something happening. So at the end of the day, we're really trying to lower risk by either removing vulnerabilities, mitigating those vulnerabilities, or reducing the actuality of that vulnerability being exploited, and then also decreasing the impact of that vulnerability. So even if something does get exploited or breached or hacked, that the impact, what they have access to, is very much limited. And that's really at the key of zero trust, is being able to lower the probability and the impact of that to overall reduce the risk. And if you look at this from a non-cybersecurity perspective, everybody out there has car insurance. If you have a car, mandated by law to at least have liability insurance, but I'm assuming most of you carry some type of full coverage to insure your own car. If you've got a car that's worth $5,000 to replace, you're probably not going to spend more than a few $100s a year to insure that car. You're certainly not going to spend more than $5,000 a year to insure that car, because if it's a total loss, you just go out and buy a new car for less than what you've cost to protect it, or at least have replacement insurance cost on it. And that's the other thing that we have to look at from a cybersecurity perspective is, obviously we want to make things as secure as possible. None of us have unlimited budgets or unlimited resources to implement, everything everywhere. And also, if you over implement security, you get in the way of business, and then people find ways around it, or the security becomes less because people need the ease of doing business. So, one of the things I talked about with Alex, I think last time we talked, was using security as an enabling technology to be able to do things that you couldn't do previously, by making it more secure and hitting regulations and different security frameworks. So we'll get more into exactly what zero trust means, but at the end of the day, we're really just trying to reduce the risk through limiting the impact and the probability of cybersecurity events happening. So one of the big, sort of misconceptions or things out there around zero trust that I see is really the difference between specific technologies and a zero trust framework. So a zero trust framework is really more of a philosophy. It's an architecture. It's something that you're striving for within your organization or your entity to really provide that least privileged access between data, users, devices, APIs, workloads, networks, all the different entities in an environment that need to communicate with each other and have access to data. Making sure that those entities have the least amount of privilege to get their job done, and are isolated to the point to where if they are breached, their impact is much lessened. There are solutions out there called zero trust network access, which are really more of a product, which is something you buy or implement to help move your zero trust journey forward. But it is one piece of zero trust, and we'll get into a few of these different areas. But a lot of people think that implementing zero trust network access is going to make you achieve a zero trust framework, and it's not. It's a important part, but it's actually a fairly small part of what you're doing from zero trust. So there's other zero trust initiatives or products out there. So there's zero trust, network access, network security, container architecture, DevOps, workload access. So there's different solutions that all feed into a larger zero trust solution. So this is really kind of one of the big misconceptions, is that zero trust is not a single product or a platform. It's not something that you can buy. It's a security framework built around the principle of least privileged. So attempting to buy zero trust as a product set is going to set you up for failure. Now, there are obviously lots of third-party products out there that help you implement zero trust, but you cannot buy zero trust. It is a philosophy, it is a framework, it is something you have to implement within your organization from top to bottom, from a technology and user perspective. And you really want to make sure that your zero trust architecture fits with your business objectives. If your security is keeping your organizations from doing business, you're not going to be very secure for long, because you can't stand in the way of your organization doing their day-to-day business.
Okay, so I'm back. You can see that Tony really knows his stuff. So if that's the topic you're interested in, be sure and go to our Technology Executives Club site, or you can listen to Tony's entire presentation on the podcast and soon to be on the YouTube channel. And look for Tony Sabaj, Sabaj, Zero Trust Concepts and Strategies. And he teaches you the concepts of zero trust. It's really a great presentation. Okay, the next one is one of my personal favorites, because I actually learned so much just talking to Tim. I really enjoyed this presentation, and we got a lot of very popular reviews. I post a lot of shorts and image quotes, quote images from the presentations on social media, and I got a lot of popular responses from posting Tim's information. So without further ado, we're going to go into emotional intelligence for technology executives with Tim Bartel giving the mentoring segment. You've got a wonderful topic about emotional intelligence for technology executives, which is really a good topic. And I'm going to say right now, do not give me a test. I do not want to know the answer. I'm pretty sure I would be a C student on this one.
I recommend them for everybody, Alex, so you might just have to bite the bullet.
You're supposed to say, no, Alex, I'm sure you're an A- for sure, at least.
A+, if anything.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to. I think that was in the script, Tim. I think that's what you're supposed to say. But anyway, Thanks for telling the truth. You know, I got one friend, if you're watching this, Chad, my buddy Chad, he is probably, besides yourself, the fellow that I know that has the highest emotional intelligence of anybody I know, besides you, Tim. And I don't know if it was natural or something that he developed, but he built a huge community in the North Shore, and he's very friendly and very helpful to people. And one thing that I noticed, I had a quote come out recently that spread a little bit on LinkedIn, is that the best technology executives, the most successful, I'll say it that way, that I see, they're all about their people and the customers that they serve. And it seems to me that this area of emotional intelligence kind of fits right in with that. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Those executives would not have successful team leadership or people skills if they weren't really high in emotional intelligence, as we'll see.
Yeah. So here's your agenda. I'll read it real quick and we'll go through each item. So what is emotional intelligence? The key pillars of emotional intelligence. Why is emotional intelligence so important to technology executives? And by the way, if you're not a technology executive watching or listening to it, this will help you too. Key takeaways for understanding emotional intelligence. So let's get into it. What is emotional intelligence? So why don't I let you tell us what it is?
Great. Thanks, Alex. And yeah, I'm really excited to be able to provide a high-level overview of what is emotional intelligence. You know, certainly, you know, in our careers, we have all run into technology workers who are extremely sharp problem solvers, come up with creative solutions. But if we press them in a meeting or something doesn't work or somebody challenges them, they get defensive, they can get confrontational. And a lot of times those folks actually don't end up with much of a career. And it's because even though they're technically very capable, their emotional intelligence really needs, they're low on emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence at its core, as you can see, is simply that capability to understand your own emotions, manage your own emotions, and understand and manage emotions of others, all to get, positive outcomes. The good news is that emotional intelligence is a skill that can be tested for and trained just like any other skill, just like any technical skill. And it's something that a lot of people don't understand. They think either people have high emotional intelligence or they don't. But really, it is something that can be trained and built on like any other skill.
So emotional intelligence, you just said it can be tested for, trained, and coached like any other skill set. So I was kind of just joking at the beginning. So there are actually tests that you could take that could say this person has emotional intelligence of whatever, or is this something that someone could take to help themselves?
Yes. Actually, there are a number of self-assessments out there for emotional intelligence that can really lead you through a retrospective look at how do you handle stressful situations? How do you handle when you're challenged? How do you handle it when things get behind? And based on those answers, you will then get a score and get recommendations for how you can improve and move forward. These can be done in an interview process. Some companies are even doing it in the hiring process.
Oh, they are.
Certainly in some of the teams I've been involved with in the past, we've done it to help in the team building process.
That's interesting. I remember when I had my first few sales jobs, this is a few years ago, they gave me some tests, and I don't know if it was emotional intelligence. I think it was more about discernment, strategy. Like they had one thing which was, you're in the woods, there's a tree, there's a brick on the ground, and there's a bear. Do you hide behind the tree, or do you pick up the brick and throw it at the bear? All right, Tim, Dr. Alex is here. What do you do? And then I'll tell you the right answer. Go ahead. What do you do, Tim?
Gosh, what do you do? I would
Quick answer.
Pick up the brick.
Pick up the brick. All right. Would you throw it? Or would you threaten him with it?
I would not throw it.
You would threaten him with it. All right.
I would threaten him with it. I would act like I'm in control.
Okay. Well, there is a study of what to do in case you find a bear in the woods. And a lot of researchers studied all the statistics. And here's what they found out. It's 50-50. It depends on the bear. So whatever you do could be the right move, maybe not. But what does the actual research show for something a little more serious of emotional intelligence? Because this is actually something if they're going to give you studies and tests and everything, there's got to be some research about this, I would assume. Yeah,
this has actually been researched pretty heavily for the last 20 years. And that research has been pretty consistent. And it shows that people that demonstrate high emotional intelligence skills tend to be much more happier at work. They actually tend to be much less stressed. And they tend to be much more productive. And the reason is that they can channel their energies into what they need to accomplish. People with low emotional intelligence, if they run into a situation where they get defensive, or somebody challenges them, they will spend the rest of the day stewing about it. Or how do I get back at that individual?
Oh, that's interesting.
Get that very negative emotional run going. Hence, they do not focus as much on just finding a positive outcome and moving forward. And that's what studies have shown. That's why high emotional intelligence skills are becoming more and more tested and trained for in the workplace, because it does, at the end of the day, lead to less stress and more productivity. That's really interesting. I'll go back to my sales experience, because, again, this was a lot of team-based work. We did team selling in all the companies I worked for, most of them. And I remember there was one lady who I will not mention. She was always in an argument, always in a fight. And then myself included, I did get defensive. I would try and do something in a tactic or something, and I would get defensive. It wasn't until many years later that I kind of figured out maybe that's not a good idea. Just to calm down and just enjoy myself and just more listen to the other person.
I think it was Covey that first turned me on to that idea. Seek first to understand and then to be understood by others. That was, believe it or not, that was a big switch for me.
Sure,
So,
and that's actually one of the key pillars, or it's a component of one of the key pillars of emotional intelligence, as we'll talk about next.
Yeah, well, let's do that. So here's a summary sheet. I'll just read it real quick. So what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the capability to understand your own emotions, recognize the emotions of others, and manage those emotions to positive outcomes. I like that. So it's almost like an action verb. It's not just like a theory. It's about actually accomplishing something. Emotional intelligence can be tested for, trained, and coached like any other skill set. And research has shown that people with high emotional intelligence, like Tim, have lower stress levels at work, are happier, and tend to be more productive. All right, so that's part one. Part two is what you call the key pillars of emotional intelligence. So why don't you walk us through each of these real quick?
Sure. Yeah, there are 4 key pillars here, and the very first one is self-awareness. Just that capability to understand how you react in certain situations. What are your hot buttons? What might somebody say in a meeting, like you joked about salesperson make you defensive? What are people doing that make your heart race, make you defensive? How good are you at understanding your impact on other individuals?
Okay, I'm just going to jump in here. I'm going to show you the pillars: self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and relationship management. So it's all good stuff. This is a very highly rated presentation, and I urge you, everybody should watch this one. I urge everybody to watch this one. And again, it's on our site, Technology Executives Review. Watch the videos, and it's called Emotional Intelligence for Technology Executives with Tim Bartel. You can see it on our you can listen to it on our podcast, and it will be on our YouTube channel as well. The next one is Stan Hammond. I mentioned him before. He has also had a wonderful career. He's currently the senior principal platform architect at ServiceNow. And I'll tell you, first of all, he's a great guy. He's really there to help people. And he's had a brilliant career. I think he had a 15-year run as group CIO at Pfizer. And then he took on a group CIO role at some other companies. And now he calls himself an individual contributor. And he's just loving it. And I know he really likes to help people. So it was great to have him join the board of advisors. With that, let me show you a segment of his interview. We'll get to that. I mean, I look at your, by the way, I'm for those of you that are listening to this, I'm looking at technologyexecutivesclub.com and the board of advisors. I'm not showing it. So when you're watching this, just go to, you can find Stan Hammond. And you said your specialties and areas of interest were innovation, cybersecurity, and technical value. And so we'll get to that in a little bit. But what I want to do now is go way back. And I noticed that you started out at Trinity International.
Right.
And where was that? It says Bachelor of Arts in BA.
That's in Deerfield, Illinois, around Chicago.
Oh, I know that, dear. It's right off a Half Day Road.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't realize you started there. Yeah. And I remember when we met in St. Louis, you were telling me about some of that background, and you're very actively involved in the community and that church community and all that, which is awesome. And I appreciated that. But then you went to Missouri Baptist University and you got your MBA. And that was a big deal for you because it doesn't say dates. Did you go and then work and then get your MBA? Did you go straight to get the MBA or?
Yeah, I'm going to show my hands right now because it basically was clawing my way through education.
Yeah.
And I did that all while I was working.
You know what? There's so many people that I speak to, Stan, that have that same experience. I interviewed another executive that's part of our group, and I think he was in his 40s when he went back and got his MBA. I think he was much older than your typical MBA, and he went back and got the MBA and did it while he's working also.
Right.
And he told me how hard that was. So I really admire folks like you.
It's challenging.
But you did it.
I can remember at 2 a.m., leaning down on my desk, just pretty much crying.
Studying.
I'm like, man, this is just not worth it. And what I, to help my girls going through their schooling is at that point, you need to realize it's really the toughest point. Yeah, that is the tough, and I'm willing to bet money that a final or an exam is, very near to that experience.
Yeah.
So it's just mounting, on top of you, and you really just need to, breathe, inhale, and say, I'm just going to do the best I can. I'm just going to do the best I can.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting insight. At that moment when you're like 2 o'clock in the morning, you're like, it doesn't matter if you're in school, at work, working on a project or whatever, everyone's going to feel that moment.
Oh yeah. And that moment really, I think, is where leaders are made. I think in that moment, tenacity, perseverance is all made. I mean, I did, a little work with the SEAL teams, and when you get to that point is when most people go through SEAL training, quit, and they ring the bell. But it's that point that is really the difference.
It totally is. I totally get that. I obviously not in the SEALs or anything. I admire all the men and women who do that. And to just be able to keep persevering. I'm a SEAL of a different color because I'm an entrepreneur. And believe me, there are those moments.
Oh yeah.
And I don't care who you are, how big your company, how much, everybody that's an entrepreneur that's successful has felt those moments. Trust me.
Yeah, you just stand up and keep going. It's really a one foot in front of the other type of philosophy. When you get feeling that way, just wait, get rid of the noise and just what's the next step, and then just let me take the next step.
Well, I'm glad we got into this because you've had such a successful career, and it sounds like this ability to keep persevering was actually extremely helpful to you.
Oh yeah. I had a big awakening when I came out of college, went in sales. That's what everybody told me. Hey, go in sales, make all this money. And then when I was doing that, I actually automated a manual process on an old Radio Shack computer.
You're kidding.
So then I got married, and my wife was in sales too. So my wife was a teacher. She went in sales. I was college, went in sales. And she looked at me and she said, you're really good at these computers. You ought to try to do what you did for your individual territory for many territories. And that was my first job at Baxter.
That's a great story.
Yeah, that was my first job at Baxter. Was I took my territory management that I did on a computer, went to Baxter and said I could do it for your 80 branches and your multi-million-dollar business. And that was a fun ride. And it was sales and marketing computer systems, which now are CRMs, data warehouses. Wow. It's all that stuff, but it wasn't named then. And I did it for Baxter. And the eye opener on that was that I actually got permission from the National Hockey League during the Stanley Cup to use that branding for me. So I had for Baxter the Stanley Cup, and it was a series of reports that showed how 3% of their customers ran 97% of their revenue.
Wow.
And they had no idea. They had no idea it was like that. And they changed their whole, marketing and sales approach based on the Stanley Cup.
The Stanley Cup, you've mentioned the Stanley Cup to me before, but never fully described it. That's wonderful. Well, let's go back to that experience, because I think this is a great lesson for everybody. Is you were in sales, and did you have your MBA by then at this point?
No, I didn't even have a degree at that point.
Okay, so you wanted to sell. Look, you go into sales. If you can sell, doesn't matter what degree you got, right?
Right.
Yeah, you can sell anything. So, once you realize it's not about you, it's about the person on the other side of the table.
Right.
So anyways, you did that, and then you automated your territory management. You were working at Baxter. You went back to the powers to be and said, look, I can help you for everybody.
Right.
What a great story.
And I did. I mean, it was a great run. I mean, they had 80 branches. At that point, well, you recognize the names now. So it was Baxter, and Baxter acquired what was then Caremark. Well, Caremark now is CVS Caremark, and now Aetna. It's the same Caremark. I was at Caremark when Baxter acquired them. And then Caremark spun off from Baxter as part of Baxter's M&A, right? They spun off that $1 billion business. So we took that.
I remember
from
that.
100.
I remember when that happened.
Yeah, and we took that from, I started with 100 million in revenue, and then when we spun it off, it was $1 billion, and it was more profitable at that $1 billion, and that was the play. That was the sales and marketing that I was in, was the acquisition, making computer systems look like one, even though you acquired another one. And then from that, I developed the Stanley Cup. Now, there is a real important lesson that I want to mention from that. It sounds cool, right? But two things happened. One is I was in sales and marketing, and I went into the IT org right after I did this.
Yes.
Well, IT does not like sales and marketing.
I wonder.
I was young, didn't know it, right? So I get in there and I start innovating, and they really didn't like me. So when that spun off to Caremark, they had me out on a branch doing an executive information system as one person, and they cut me out. I was gone. They laid me off. So, and my group was still in sales and marketing, but I was trying to expand and help everybody. Well, that wasn't the case. And there's one real fundamental reason why that happened. The Stanley Cup is me, right? Now you got to play the team. The team wins. And the Stanley Cup was not a team thing. So that lesson learned I took, and really after that is when I started looking for the director of IT.
That's
I'm like,
really
I've got
interesting.
I've got to turn this into where I run the full IT stack. So then when I'm innovative, I can innovate and help the company sell more.
But still, how do you jump from that to director of IT? Where was your first director of IT job?
That was in St. Louis.
Okay.
St. Louis for a couple hundred long-term care facilities. We did therapy for them.
Okay. So you worked for a long-term care company.
Right.
And how do you jump from that role? I guess you had enough IT experience because you were doing, sounds like you were doing innovative work with the CRM. But how do you go from that to like all of a sudden, we'll give him the full stack? Did you already have, like, if I look at your certifications, CSA, CISSP, ITIL, MBA,
that's more,
was that later?
Yeah, that's later. So really what was happening there is I got my 4-year degree.
Yeah.
I got that. And I got every computer certification for every language they'd send me to. So that's
a great insight, certifications.
Yeah, I developed, you didn't typically get certified then as big as it is now, but I had multiple languages, and they were the key languages of that company. So I could literally have a team and myself and do anything within that company because we learned the languages they had.
That's interesting.
And you're young and you pay the price, right? I can remember work weeks I can remember, here's one simple project. We acquired Caremark. Caremark ran their territories by zip code. Baxter ran their territories by county. So do you know that there are just over 3,000 counties and there are over 40,000 zip codes? I sat on my kitchen table all night and correlated what counties and zip codes correlate to each other. And then what I did is I took that back to work and completely ran territory management and the commission plan because I had the mapping.
Wow.
And I get it. And it's funny. I live, in Virginia now, and Virginia is one of those where counties and cities are different than everywhere else in the country. It's only Louisiana and Virginia that are a little different in their political setup. So that's what I had to get through. I had to find out, here I am in the Midwest in Chicago, and I'm looking at Virginia, and I'm like, how do you figure out Virginia? It's kind of weird. How do you figure out Louisiana? It's kind of weird. Well, the French had Louisiana, and they did it differently. And then the English had Virginia, and they did it differently.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you picked up some things. So that's a great story. So now you're director of IT. I think I just wanted to highlight the certifications is a really wise strategy. So whoever's watching this, write that one down because I interview a lot of people and I see that over and over and over again. Certifications are a great way to enhance your career. And I see a lot of people doing that. Like there's different certifications for AI right now. Obviously, that's a hot one. But you don't necessarily have to go out and spend $100 on an MBA or whatever your number is, depending on what kind of school you go to. you can rise with certifications. Now it helps, I think, if you get an MBA now to really go into upper management, but you don't have to go from one stage to the other. Well, that's really interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, quick pitch on education is that when, we're talking right now, we're probably in around a 1990 type time frame, right?
Yeah.
You and I. So if you bounce out into the SAIC, right, like 2018 timeframe, now I've got an MBA, right, at that point. And at GKN, we started a security program with the Department of Defense. So the Department of Defense required a CISSP to get in the classified program. So that's when I, got that way and got in that program, started that program. And then when I got the job at SAIC, I not only had that credential for SAIC, but I'm around the leadership table and they're hiring someone new. So all of a sudden I find out, remember the old saying of, the check box, right? Like, yes, he has an MBA. So I'm sitting at the leadership table and it goes around, we're looking at so-and-so. And it was, do they have an MBA? And then I realized everybody at that table had an MBA.
Had an MBA. Yeah. I hear you loud and clear. So if you want to go there, as I think about it, there's only a couple people I've interviewed that are really high in an organization that don't have some type of master's or MBA.
Right.
It's just, and many people tell me that continuous education is a key. It sounds like that is for you too, or it has been.
Yeah, really, I'm always learning. I've got 3 certifications right now that I'm going for. So
is that right?
Yeah, it's always out there, and you always have to do it. You always have to get good at whatever company you're in is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Being good at what they're doing, it never hurts. And you can pull a lateral job, or you can just do something different sometimes. If the cards aren't right at a particular time in your life, if you're a linchpin in the company, you're a linchpin. They need you. So you've got a couple different options.
So let's switch gears a little. I want to talk about, I've known you for a while, but we started working together just recently once you joined the board. And I sense from you very process and very discipline orientated. Because
I think I am.
You're very organized. Huh?
Well, once I get into a group, you realize that, right? You don't really necessarily know how organized you are or how persistent you are until you get around people that aren't. So, back to, you want to work for a company or an organization that's, somewhat similar in culture with you, because that's the result of a lot of conflict if people aren't kind of working the same way.
Well, no, I think it's admirable, actually. I actually think those are really good qualities. But I'm looking at that and I'm saying, how does that, when I look at innovation, cybersecurity, and technical value, I just read them: continued innovation towards increasing company value, sales, and profits; cybersecurity, reducing the event noise to actionable incidents and how to really prevent a breach; and technical value, developing a focus on technical value reduces cost and complexity. Right now, your role over at ServiceNow, you're the principal platform architect. You're really focused on their main product, right? Helping them.
Yeah, what I do is, people, the salespeople sell it, and customers buy it, and then my team comes in after they've bought it and said, okay, we want to up velocity and we want to up the value. You bought it, paid a lot of money, so now we want to give you that value back 10x, and then we also want to speed it up. So that's what I do all day: speed it up, and what can we do to get more value? And there are different ways to do that. But if you flip back all the way to Baxter, right? That's what I've done.
That's what I'm saying.
That's exactly what I've done.
That's what I'm trying to get to. Yeah. Thanks for saying that. But okay, so what's your secret sauce? I go back to Baxter. You had an enthusiasm, clearly, for the project.
Mm-hmm.
How did you figure that out? Because if I look at your career, I think we found a really good thread here. You've been consistently finding this really, I'll call it high added value. You call it technical value. I think it's a mix of innovation and technical value.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a couple comments on that is if
Yeah.
you look at my background, I think even one time you challenged me, you seem like a consultant. Well, yeah, I would have been perfect in a consulting job. But I realized though, with having a family, that the out on Sunday, back on Thursday consulting, cycle
yeah,
is not good for a family. So what I did is I worked real hard to find a company with a huge problem. So that
that's interesting.
Meridian Medical Technologies, that long-term care company, all those had very large problems. And Meridian, in fact, was in the red. So they were assembling a leadership team to take them out of red and into black with the EpiPen. You look at the EpiPen now and it's like, wow, man, that thing's fantastic. Well, in 1998, it was not fantastic. And it was in the red, having a recall. I think they had 2 or 3 recalls on the device when I showed up, and then they developed that leadership team. So it was a locale in St. Louis, high workload, and a huge problem. And then we just went to task, and started solving each problem. And they were not automated. They had an ERP system that was running parallel to their manual system at that point.
So what qualities do you think you brought to the table to help them solve that problem?
Well, one, to run a manual system and a computer system, parallel and balance the books every month is just a complete waste of time, right? And then they had a quality system. Pharma always has their quality systems. Yeah. They had a quality system completely manual. Well, there were some automated ones at that point. We took their messaging system, and they had an AS400 then running the ERP. So we took the strength of an AS400, the strength of Lotus Notes, really developed a concept where, again, like the Stanley Cup, right? But I didn't bring that forward. I kind of developed the team.
It wasn't the Stanley Cup. Yeah. It was the company team cup.
It was the team. Yeah, it was the team. So then my team that we organized basically made it so that we won't have another recall. Well, how will we not have another recall? Well, we'll have a quality system that, in fact, takes care of the quality on it. And I was written up in CIO magazine and stuff back in those years because I had taken things that were manual and now they're computerized. And today, ironically, they're running over 10 of the quality systems I put in place with my team. They're running the ERP from the 90s still at that Pfizer location. Now, granted, it's spun off now, but they're still running the same ERP. And it was just because of the strength of the transaction. We had the FDA in. The FDA looked at our transactions and our audit logs. Yeah. It's a strong thing. And that job, you learn new things too at jobs. And we had floods. We had lightning strikes. We had electrical storms. We had equipment failures, all at that location, and we stayed in business and didn't miss a day of production. And we had up to 4 feet of water in some of our facilities.
Wow.
So it just, you learn a lot too. It's not just all, one way. It's many different ways. In fact, by the end of that job, it was more where my leadership team was, hey, if you want something done, you go to Stan.
Okay, I'm back. And you can see why I wanted to share that story with you. So many great insights from Stan. And this is the beginning of the interview. But, think about it. He started off as a sales exec in college, then started helping the IT department, finished his degree, took all those certifications, had the Stanley Cup, huge success at this company, realized, now this is where I think he picked up a lot of emotional intelligence in here, realized that as great as he did, that, he had alienated the IT department. And that he shares the story with us is even awesome. And it's just, you can go back and think of that. And then he went on and realized, I'm going to take the next step, and it's all about the team. I think that is the biggest lesson of all I heard. And there was at least I have 6 to 8 great lessons there that he shared with us. And that's just, like I said, that's just the beginning of the interview. So you really want to watch Stan. Great job. He talks about a lot of great things that happened, a lot of challenges that he went through and how he solved them. And he talked about the stage that he has been in recently, which is going from, big group CIO, huge companies, to a great company, individual contributor, and the reasons why. So it's It's really very insightful, and we really appreciate Stan being part of our community. So again, that is in our Board of Advisors section of our website, technologyexecutivesclub.com. Anyways, let me just wrap this up. We went through a Board of Advisor interview with Nathan Rajen over at Joyson Safety Systems, a great keynote panel, AI and data in the enterprise with Prabir Chatterjee and Tom Drez, Zero Trust Concepts and Strategies from Tony Sabaj, Emotional Intelligence for Technology Executives with Tim Bartel, and Stan Hammond, Board of Advisor interview, and just a great content all around. So I urge you all to see all of our videos at technologyexecutivesclub.com. We're also on YouTube under Technology Executives Review. There's not a lot there yet as I record this thing, but we're gonna have it mirror the podcast in the next week or two. So maybe by the time you watch this, it'll be done. Technology Executives Review on YouTube, but you can see everything now on our site, technologyexecutivesclub.com, and you always will be. And you can listen to our podcast under the name of Technology Executives Review, Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts, as well as our website. Go ahead and get to our site. If you're not on our newsletter and you want to be notified about all the content that we're putting out, it's like when you get in Netflix and you see, hey, here's the next movie, whatever. We send those kind of emails out regularly now, and it's very helpful. People love them. I get a ton of compliments from people who say thanks for the newsletter. And we're working on some special things to give you just for being a member of the Insiders Club, the newsletter. And it might say subscriber at some point. And if you want to get involved and learn about how to be a regular on our media network, either you're a senior executive, internally IT and technology, or you're an external provider, technology founder or industry executive who's known as the thought leader, or want to be the thought leader in your organization, then reach out to me and ask about our Board of Advisors program. I put some information on the website. We're growing that out. So you can go in and ask for information. I'll send you a video you can watch. And then if you want to have a discovery call after you watch the video, then we can do that. So just reach out to us and we'll get you that information. And remember, the Board of Advisors is the Board of Advisors to the technology community. It's not just to me. I learn a lot from these folks. Clearly, every time I talk to them, I pick something up. And I do ask them questions because they're on my Board of Advisors. And we talk and have a good relationship. But these people are really volunteering their time to put out this great content for you. And in the process, they're enhancing their brand and expanding their network. So be sure and book a discovery call on our site if that's something you're interested in. So I want to close it out and say thank you for attending. We appreciate you. It's our honor to serve you and your team. Don't forget to visit us at technologyexecutivesclub.com. Have a great day.